Hello and welcome to The Horrible Idea, a podcast about horror movies. I'm Stephanie, and I'm clearly the scholar of this podcast if we're talking archetypes.
And I'm Jack, and I say cleanse them. Cleanse the world of their ignorance and sin. Bathe them in the crimson of... Am I on speakerphone? Because that's really weird. I don't even know who's in the room there.
It's just me and Finn, but, could be worse. So if you're new to the podcast, each week we pick a scary movie and we talk about it. I'm kind of a scaredy cat, but I think both me and Jack have sort of a blank spot as far as our filmographies go with watching horror movies. Although that's really starting to change since the advent of this podcast. So if you have a movie that you think might scare us, hit us up on Instagram at The Horrible Idea or on Twitter at HorriblePod. We'll be having some surveys and asking for hot takes and things like that. So follow us on social.
Yeah, this episode we are going to be discussing 2012's meta horror Mutant Enemy joint, and I do mean joint, The Cabin in the Woods. To tell us some facts about this film.
Since I'm the scholar, I will fill in the facts. So, this movie was released April 13th, 2012, directed by Drew Goddard, produced by Joss Whedon, and written by Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon, with a budget of $30 million and a box office of 66.5.
The IMDb gave this a 7 out of 10. Rotten Tomatoes critics gave it a 92, and Rotten Tomatoes audience gave it a 74. And looking at the reviews on IMDb, this is a very divisive movie.
Yeah,
a lot.
I kind of got that impression. Yeah, from looking at I looked at Rotten Tomatoes, but yes. And actually, the Horrible Idea audience polls are following about what the Rotten Tomatoes audience scores. We got a 75% approval rating for this movie on Instagram, and I think it was about the same on Twitter, 67% positive on Twitter. Although one of the options was Chris Hemsworth is hot, which may have skewed the results away from...
Indeed.
Yes.
The greatest of the Hemsworths. Yeah, I saw a lot of rants about this isn't a real horror movie. This is bullshit. It's making fun of horror movies. This is just a bunch of tropes put together.
Right.
Which
I guess if you're a purist,
right.
That,
I am an impurist. Yeah, apparently Joss Whedon and Drew Goddard wrote the script in 3 days.
Well, I guess I believe that.
Sure. Coffee or, harder things can get you to...
Does that include, punch-ups? I'm guessing not. I'm guessing that's just, their first draft.
No, they sent it to me right after, and I put all the banter in there. We've been doing a sort of Jack checklist, so I just wanted to go through the two. We might add to them, but yes, there are breasts in this film, exposed breasts, and when it comes to edgelords, not really. Although maybe if you count my favorite character, Fornicus, Lord of Bondage and Pain. And speaking of breasts, apparently the first. So this is the first movie Drew Goddard directed, and he was extremely uncomfortable directing Anne Hutchinson's nude scene. It was not much of a nude scene, but she comforted him, telling him it was all very professional and there's no big deal taking her top off. And I wish more people had.
This really yucked me out.
That's
just
interesting.
That this young woman had to comfort the director who's in this position of power.
Yeah, I read also
man.
he was raised in a pretty religious background, so sort of he was.
Then he also wrote the script. Then don't write a nude scene into the script.
Maybe that was
And
Joss.
make your actress have to do emotional labor so that you can direct her with her top
I'm pretty
off.
sure she got paid 6 figures, but yes. So, what were your preconceptions about this film?
So I knew that there was some sort of like simulation. I didn't really know what exactly it was. But I knew it wasn't just like they go to a cabin and things happen. I knew there was some sort of like, you know, either they're being surveilled or it's being like streamed on television, or, you know, I knew there was some sort of that dynamic to it.
Right.
And I also knew that Chris Hemsworth was in it, and that's about it.
Yeah, so as I said in the last episode, we were originally this is the first movie we're going to do, and so I watched it first and said, hey, we shouldn't do this first, because all it is a sort of mashup of a bunch of other horror movie ideas. So,
right. Which I think I would have gotten a lot of them, because they're so broad, some of them, but, you know, I think it is better served having watched some of the foundational horror texts.
Yeah, and also a couple of the big ones that it sort of pays homage to we haven't watched. Like Ringu is like the Japanese sort of subplot is sort of mimicking Ringu, and in general, like a big part of it is mimicking the Evil Dead series, specifically the first 2. But let's break down this plot. 5 college students, Jules, Kurt, Dana, Marty, and Holden, take a trip to a rustic cabin that Kurt's cousin owns, or does he have a cousin? On their way, they encounter a creepy gas station attendant who insults them and imparts a strange warning about the cabin. As they explore the cabin, they find many mysterious things, like a 2-way mirror in one of the rooms and a trap door to a cellar full of occult objects. All the while, the 5 are being monitored by workers in some sort of government lab. Their every move is being guided by the lab and its director. The workers in the lab bet on what kind of monsters will kill the 5.
Or the 4. We'll get to that later. As they explore the cellar and the rest of the house, they awaken a family of hillbilly zombies that kill Jules. As the rest try to escape, Kurt is killed when he runs his dirt bike into some kind of force field. Sorry, that was kind of a funny moment. Holden is killed by the zombies as well. Every time one of them dies, the people in the lab pull a lever, and blood fills some sort of underground symbol in a stone slab. Dana and Marty, the only ones left alive, find a hidden entrance that leads from the cabin to the lab. There, they find dozens of cells with different monsters in them. Eventually, they release all of those monsters who kill most of the lab workers. In the end, we learn the entire simulation is an elaborate sacrifice ritual that America must undertake once a year. Similar rituals take place over the world. These rituals keep at bay ancient horrors that will cause massive death and destruction.
Yeah, it's a fun plot. It's right up my alley, honestly.
Yeah, so they don't really hide the fact that there's this, you know, it's not a twist that there's this lab controlling everything, because the opening scene is with Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford down in the science lab. So from the beginning, you know that there's this other, you know, plot going on.
Yeah, but you don't really know, like, why. Well, you sort of piece it together. And apparently the director and Joss, the opening scene is so different than the whole cabin thing, so they wanted people to actually think that they were, like, in the wrong movie. But it did set up an interesting sort of dynamic of sort of switching back and forth, and you kind of really like all these people in the lab. They're all kind of likable, and, you know, you don't know.
Well, and they picked, like, two character actors like Richard Jenkins and Bradley Whitford that are probably familiar to a lot of American audiences, to be these main two guys. So that helps. But yeah, I also just, I love Chris Hemsworth. So when he came in, I was like,
right.
All right.
Well, let's get into our favorite characters.
Yeah. So like I was just talking about, but Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins are definitely my favorite. Like their banter is really funny. I think they're both just like, they're great character actors, and kind of their sardonic wit that they bring to the dialogue, and the way that Bradley Whitford is just sort of dismissive of like other people in the lab is really funny. And then besides them, I'd probably say it would be Chris Hemsworth and Jesse Williams, just really bringing the hot to this movie.
Yeah, a lot of shirts coming off.
Yeah, I feel like we don't always get... I feel like there's often a lot of male gaze in these horror movies, and this one had a little bit of, you got to see Jesse Williams take his shirt off through a two-way mirror, and that was nice.
Well, Joss Whedon is a feminist, so...
Oh, please.
Yeah, similarly, I really liked Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins' characters, Hadley and Sitterson. And I like the little glimpses you sort of got of their lives. Like, one of them would be like, "Hey, so you wanna come over this weekend? My wife's making a cake or something like that." Or like,
Yeah, he was really concerned about his cabinets.
Yeah, well, which is like
they
a
were
super...
like, there's a whole fertility thing, like.
And then also working with them is Amy Acker, who I like in a lot of different stuff.
I don't know that I've ever seen her in anything.
Interest.
Oh.
Yeah, she's done a lot of Whedon stuff. Yeah, I just like them, and honestly, I liked all the characters. They were all snarky and fun and weird, and I liked. I especially liked. So we'll get into a little bit more in a bit, but so they're all sort of the five college kids are all embodying these different kind of archetypes, and but it slips out in ways that they're not actually these archetypes, because Chris Hemsworth character is this jock, but then Jesse Williams character is like, he's not though. Like he's at the school for a academic scholarship, and he's a sociology
major.
And in the beginning you get a little glimpse where he's like, oh, don't read this book, it's blah blah blah.
Yeah, because the conceit is that this lab, they pipe in like different chemicals, like they have like pheromones that are supposed to make them hornier, and then there's like the blonde girl, she dyes her hair blonde,
right,
like before they leave, and they got into her life like before she even left for the cabin, because they put chemicals in the hair dye that accelerated dumb choices. And then one of my favorite things was that the stoner character, Marty, was that apparently one of the people who works in chems was like, nobody noticed his stash. Like, the stuff he's been smoking has been preventing all of our, like, chemicals from working, because he's just been high the whole time.
Yeah,
which I thought was kind of funny.
A lot of very pro-pot stuff in this movie, which is kind of fun.
I also definitely at one point thought that, like, so, I mean, jumping ahead, but the whole conceit is that, oh, they all have to die, but the virgin can be alive at the end.
Yeah, it's an optional.
And so through a series of kind of twists, it's revealed that we thought Marty had died earlier, but he didn't. And he pops back up. So I was like, wait, is it going to be revealed that he's actually a virgin? Because they kind of say that Jules isn't... Sorry, is it Jules?
No, Dana.
Dana. So it's kind of revealed that Dana is not actually a virgin, but she's like close enough. And so I was like, wait, are they going to reveal that Marty is actually a like total, like has never had any kind of sex before? Because I was like, I would kind of believe it, but anyway, but that's not the reveal.
Also, I liked when they were sort of revealing the different archetypes and so on, and Marty sees that he was the fool, and he's kind of makes this face like, that's fucked up. I'm not the fool.
He kind of is, but I mean, he rolls up to go on the vacation with a gigantic bong, like driving while smoking the bong. I don't know how more foolish you can get than that.
Well, there's a fun fact about that. So it was a bong that was like folded up into a thermos. And that was actually a working prototype that cost over $5,000 to make, but it was a working bong that collapsed into a coffee mug.
Yeah, that's ridiculous that they spent $5,000 on that.
Well, besides our favorite characters, the other characters of this movie were the monsters, and there were lots and lots of monsters. So, what were your favorite monsters?
Well, I really liked the animals, which is probably not that surprising. Like the giant snake was really cool. I mean, they all looked pretty CGI'd out, but, I don't know. I wasn't mad at it. The giant snake was cool, and then I really liked the giant bat, because he kind of reminded me of, like, a dragon.
Well, he was actually called the dragon bat, so.
Oh, well, how did you get to meet him? You gotta link me up.
Took a deep dive into a wiki that had a list of all of the different monsters and what they were called in the script.
Yeah, that's a lot. The only guy I did not really like aggressively was that merman, and he can go to fucking blowhole hell.
But it was such a great reveal, because the whole time I think Bradley Whitford's character was just like kept hoping that the merman would show up to kill the college kids, and they'd never come up in all the years because they bet on all the monsters. Yeah. And then finally he shows up. Bradley Whitford's
I had actually seen a screenshot of that guy just kind of crawling when I had searched for this movie at some point. So when I saw him appear, I was like, wait, I know that guy. Oh, get him out of here. But he was gross.
Well, my favorite character, no surprise, was Fornicus, the Lord of Bondage and Pain. He was the guy with
this was not surprising
the
at
saws in his head, which is actually, totally a riff on like Pinhead and the other Cenobites from Hellraiser.
Yeah, I actually got that, even though I've never seen Hellraiser.
Yeah, but
I actually
Pinhead's
got that reference.
He's a powerful character.
Plus he had that little thing.
Yeah, that was like the
that little. It was box. Like a ball instead of a cube, but yeah.
Yes. And then I like the dolls, the sort of family of they just had like round masks, white masks, and like it was like a.
Yeah, they kind of remind me of like The Purge or something.
The Purge, or even like Us, or lots of different things. And that's an interesting thing they said. Not that these were like copying horror movies, but these were actually the things that inspired horror movies. These are like all things that exist, and that's why they're in the sort of social subconscious.
So I will say also the characters that actually get picked for this,
are the worst.
Yeah, they're kind of the most boring, but they reminded me of the one and only episode of The X-Files that I've ever seen, which is Home.
Right.
Which I watched the day it debuted on television.
Interesting.
My sister made me watch it. I don't think she had any idea it was going to be the scariest episode of X-Files ever. But
I don't know about that.
It's been, a lot of people agree that it's the scariest. And it was actually only aired on TV like a couple of times because it was so disturbing. But it's about some like hillbilly inbred killers. And so when the hillbilly zombies showed up, I kept expecting there to be like a mom on a roller bed under a sofa or something, and I was like, oh. It reminded me a lot of that.
Well, yeah, and I think both of those are actually playing off The People Under the Stairs, which was a Wes Craven sort of horror comedy.
Well, sure, and like, rednecks are scary, so.
Yeah.
But also I also like the trope of the what do you call him? The prophet of doom or whatever, the guy that you were
right.
The guy that you were referencing in your intro, who was like a troubling kind of backwoods caricature where he was like, oh, get that whore out of here, and like,
yeah,
I don't know, had a weird eye and everything, but I did like that phone call when he calls in and is just like going on this rant, and then they're all laughing at him.
Yeah,
what was his name? Mordecai?
I think it was Mordecai or Ezekiel or something like that.
Something biblical and weird.
Yeah, and there was a character like that in Texas Chainsaw and Friday the 13th. So, well-used trope. So, shall we do your 6 degrees of cinema?
Yeah. This one was fun. So Kristen Connolly, she plays Dana, the virgin archetype. And she was in the first season of House of Cards. She played the girlfriend / aide to Peter Russo, who was played by Tori Stoll, one of my favorite
shocking
TV actors, and super hot. So Tori Stoll was on the most recent season of Billions, which is another show that I really love. That's like, Billions is like my stories. Like, it's sort of soapy and stupid, but it's so fun. So he was on Billions with Maggie Siff, who I also love. And she was on Mad Men in, I think, season 1 as well, with John Hamm, the Hamaconda. And he played an FBI agent in The Town, the Ben Affleck directed heist movie, which has an incredible performance actually by Jeremy Renner, who I feel like gets clowned on a lot, but he's really good in The Town. And Jeremy Renner, of course.
I have not seen The Town.
It's really good. I'd recommend it. It's a really fun heist movie.
Yeah.
And then Jeremy Renner, of course, is Hawkeye.
In MASH, yeah.
In the Avengers, movies. Right. And he is on that team of the Avengers with Thor, who is Chris Hemsworth, who's also in this movie.
Amazing. It all comes full circle.
I knew I had to, as much as I kind of have a love-hate relationship with the MCU, I kind of had a feeling we were going to end up there with this 6 degrees.
Yeah, I have more of a love-love relationship, but shout out to another podcast, Binge Mode, which has been doing all of the MCU. I was just listening to Spider-Man Homecoming while doing my dishes. Yeah.
It's so funny. I usually, I've listened to all the seasons of Binge Mode, but I just feel like my entire world is saturated with the MCU, that I'm like, I don't need to listen to 400 hours of podcasts about it also. Love you guys. You guys do great work. One of the, top podcasts ever, but I'll wait until the MCU is receded, when I'm, 85 years old.
I heard Jason's leaving.
He left.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's just still finishing up the Marvel series, but right. He's been at Crooked Media, I think, for a month or 2.
Oh. Well, if Crooked Media and The Ringer are out there, let me tell you about my pitch of the week, which you might want to pick up as a audio series. So we go back in time a bit, right? We go back about 10 years, and it's just day-to-day life in this lab. and we start the day after a successful sacrifice, because they said they've been successful for like a long time. So they have 1 year until the next sacrifice. So in that year, they there's one team that is going out to try to find 5 college kids who like fit the profile, and then another team that's like maybe looking for new monsters to add to the menagerie. It'd be kind of like part Ghostbusters, part The Office, the little bit of West Wing in there, because I mean you have Bradley Whitford anyway, and then the special end of the season 2-parter with that year's sacrifice.
Very nice. I like now that Netflix doesn't have The Office anymore, maybe they'll look into picking this up to fill that void.
Get at me. Have your people call my people, and my people are me.
Your agent, Zelda
Yes.
Fitzgerald, will be on the case.
She's really good. She was just trying to eat my corned beef and on rye sandwich. So, a new little bit we're having here is called "What is the Horrible Idea?" I didn't mean to say that in such a Seinfeldian way, but
what's the horrible
idea? What is with this horrible idea? No.
So, yeah, let's get down to the horrible idea.
Let's get down to it. So it's what is the premise, not premise, but like what is the moral or the sort of theme that this is putting forward? Like a lot of them are like, promiscuous teenagers should die, or racism is bad, or, rednecks are evil. I support all of these.
The death of the American South.
Sure. What did you take away from this film?
This one was interesting, right? Because it's meta, so it is reflecting those ideas like promiscuity is bad, or, doing drugs is bad. But then it kind of turns it on its head, right? And so there's the whole idea of like them being sort of sacrificial lambs. And I guess it was interesting. It's sort of like a sins of the father thing. Because they have to pick these like young people to go off and die. And also just interesting that like, I don't know, I did like the whole premise of like fitting people into these categories, and the fact that this concept, like these stone tablets with the blood outlines, you would think were like molded by the ancient gods or something. So it's like, oh, well, even back in the ancient days of like the Balrog or whoever's down there were 5 types of humans. Like a jock, a slut, a virgin, a fool, and a scholar.
Well, Americans. There are 5 kinds of Americans. There are 4 kinds of British people. We all know that.
Did they show the 4 tablets in
No,
Britain?
I was just making a Harry Potter joke, but go on.
Oh, yeah. Was it like brave, smart, tricksters, and miscellaneous?
Yes.
Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. I feel like it had sort of a like, the sins of past generations coming back to, haunt. And then I guess these people just deciding, wait, I don't want to die. I'm just going to let everyone die instead.
Yeah, I mean, I think I took a very sort of millennial look at this, which was like, specifically at the end. Like, you could say a lot of stuff about the sort of postmodern flipping like a meta-narrative, flipping all these cliches on their heads, which was fun, and they did. But in the end, the 2 teens that are left decide not to go through with it, and pretty much the world ends. And I think that's sort of a millennial idea of, we would rather die than participate in the sort of horrific practices of older generations, like the patriarchy, racism, sexism, blah, blah, blah. Like, instead of just continuing this cycle, end it.
Yeah, I kind of wanted Dana to shoot him just because, like, we haven't even broached this, but, I figure if people are listening this far, there's been a lot of spoilers. You're not worried about that, but there is a big spoiler that I'm about to say. So at the very end, they've kind of killed everybody in the lab. And who shows up? Sigourney friggin' Weaver.
Ripley, man.
And she's like, we'll all be fine if you just kill this stoner who is the fool because you are able to stay alive. Man, if Sigourney Weaver asked me to do, like, anything, I'd be like, okay, yes, done. All right. What's next? Dana didn't feel the same way.
Fair. Maybe she's not a fan.
I guess. She was more into Dallas, I guess.
Yeah, I could see that. But at the same time, fuck the man. All right, final reactions.
All right, so I liked this one. So I did. So this being a movie of references to other movies, I liked a thing that I liked in another movie, which was The Conjuring, how they had that room full of curiosities, right? That they had taken from haunted houses, and each one kind of was from a different story. And I liked how they had built that into the movie because it left them open for so many different avenues they can go from there. And they did the same sort of thing in this movie where once they get into the basement, there are all these different trinkets. Like there's the piano, there's a necklace.
Yeah, there was even like a scary doll.
There was like the ballerina music box. There was the Fornicus ball. And so it's you kind of figure out at the moment, like, oh, different things are going to happen based on these items because that's what they're sort of betting on.
Right.
But then in the end is when you see, like, oh, how they link back, like the ballerina in the music box is that scary-ass tooth fairy, sugar plum fairy, whatever she was. Sugar plum fairy?
Sugar plum fairy.
So I really liked that. I love kind of like, I just love having like cabinets of curiosities that, all link to different stories. I like that element.
Me too.
The performances were all fun. I like that we got to see some hot guys in addition to just seeing like, breasts, which I also don't mind, but, I like them having more than just the one, girl get naked. There was a little bit of a male, at least top nudity. It wasn't really too scary, although I will say the scariest scene to me was when she was making out with the wolf, because the wolf looked really real, and I just could picture it coming to life and like chewing her face off. And
she really went for it,
so that whole scene, well, yeah, everyone was just like, whoa. And well, because they had already started pumping in the dumb and horny stuff. But anyway, that was probably the scariest scene to me. I was sort of watching that through my fingers because I was just picturing it biting her nose off or something. Didn't happen. But then, besides that, I think seeing that freaky ass merman come out of the darkness was not a favorite. So for scare factor, there's definitely some suspense. I'd probably give it a 5 out of 10. And then entertainment factor, I'll say a 7.5, maybe an 8. I've said many times, but I love a 90-minute movie. This one went maybe just a little bit longer than I think I would have preferred, but overall fun, and, you know, like I said, great performances. Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins should just be in everything. And I mean, Richard Jenkins kind of is in everything. So
Yeah, I could see them.
What about
as, you? I could see them as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. Well,
or Waldorf and Statler.
Sure, or Lucy and Ethel. You know me. I love postmodernism. I love meta.
Do we know that?
I mean, if you don't really know me, nobody really knows me, but
the audience.
Yeah. So meta narratives, horror stuff. It was all just fun, and yeah, and I liked that it was fun and funny, but not really overtly a comedy. I don't think. It was it did some fun, like, sexy things in the beginning with the mirror, but sort of like everyone, like, decided not to be super creepy. But there was also that, but I'm just going to look for one more second. And that was all fun. And I loved all the banter in the lab. Like I said, I could watch a whole, Netflix series on that. And if you'd like to hear that, you should tell Netflix. But yeah, scare factor, I'll give it a 3. Entertainment factor, I'm going to give it an 8.5. High praise indeed.
Yeah.
What's coming up next?
So next week we're going to be talking about 2010's Insidious. Another Patrick Wilson scary movie vehicle. So review us on Apple Podcasts, if you please. And actually, I'm going to put this out there. If you leave a non-hateful review, please don't complain about Jack's vocal fry. Men have enough problems hearing about, the sound of their voice.
You can complain about me. I prefer it.
But if you leave us a review, we'll read it on the pod. You can throw in some jokes or make fun of how hot we are, or make fun of how smart we are.
Letters to the editor,
like that.
Penthouse Forum, whatever.
Complain about facts we got wrong.
Sure.
But we're also found on Spotify or on Stitcher. We're on YouTube, wherever you listen.
Yeah, and if you have any interesting facts about Insidious or The Cabin in the Woods, or if you have a suggestion for a movie you think might scare the pants off us, let us know on Twitter or email us at thehorribleidea@gmail.com. Don't have any witty ending things, but, keep it real.
Don't ride your motorcycle into a force field that is keeping you inside a horror movie simulation.
Yeah, it was a dirt bike. Thanks. Bye.
Why did you have to correct me as the last thing on the podcast?